Oh, hello everybody, this is Dusty Circuit here for the next installment of all the projects I've done on Autcraft. And before we actually go on to the third base I have done, I'm considering instead just doing with, just kind of talking about a few of the other projects I've done kind of in between. And kind of as I said in the previous video, kind of about the second base, I was a player who just wasn't really that social, and most of the time I would just kind of work on my own projects, though I did have a small circle of close friends that I would spend time with. And though sometimes I actually did kind of break out of that shell, so to speak, and I actually did do projects with many other players, or at least a few other players, to help the community. And this first, one of my first kind of projects that kind of involved the community was a project that I kind of decided to call the multi-farm. Well, because it was a combination of many other different farms kind of built together in one area. And I do have a few screenshots from that project, but I wasn't really able to. Well, I could have recreated it here in this world, but I've decided I kind of have enough screenshots that instead I'm just going to show you some of the screenshots and talk about it then. Oh, anyway, this isn't really the whole area, but you could. So basically, this was a kind of like a sugarcane farm, and you can kind of see in that side of the picture there is a cactus farm. And I think I might have, and I also had a tree farm as part of this project. And kind of how it started was I kind of went to one of the community farms that were on the Autcraft server, and they actually had I think they actually had a portal that went directly to it from spawn. And at the time, this was back in when Autcraft was on its second spawn, and that was also around the time I first joined the server. And basically, I decided to kind of start this project kind of near to that farm, just so kind of other players could get to it easily, I guess. And I also just, well, you see, I started out this project where I wanted to build a mob farm, like one of those mob traps that would have water that would flush the mobs off of spawning pads. But I ran into issues where that mob farm just wasn't working very well. Like, I got almost no spawns in it, despite me building it like 100 blocks up in the sky and also lighting up all the spawning areas, or rather making sure all the spawning pads are dark. And well, that's at the time I didn't understand mob cap, and of course, that the mob cap on a server is usually spread out across all the players that were on. And I think I even posted on the forums about it, and I even had a admin help look into the problem I was having, but I ended up just tearing that farm down because it didn't work out, and then I actually started on a tree farm, which of course I don't have screenshots of, but it's basically when I originally built that tree farm, I started with a design that was sort of like a modified version of Cube Hamster's like really old tree farm that he did back in 1.4, 1.5 or so, that he dubbed the Tree Eater. And I basically built that farm, but without the leaf crusher. Like it just had the part with the sand that would push the logs up, and then that would send it into a collection area. And then I think I might have had problems with that design kind of not working, or it would work most of the time, but sometimes it would, just due to odd behavior, it would break. And I guess just because some redstone just doesn't work too well in a multiplayer server. And though I think at a later point I may have added the leaf crusher to that design because I wanted to have it, and then at another later point I changed it to a different design which was simpler, which worked fine for the most part, but sometimes it would still break. I guess although this was kind of around the time of I started experiencing the lag issues on the server that was plaguing my second base. And I guess just kind of in the meantime, while that was happening, I also built kind of an extension of that whole area, which included the farm which is basically kind of what you're staring at in this picture right now. It's basically this was kind of a sugarcane farm that I had built. What was cool about that design was it is 100% lossless, or nearly. I'm pretty sure it was a lossless design of a sugarcane farm, and it harvested 2 high sugarcane, or I think 3 high actually, with only just a single row of sticky pistons. And how that actually would work is it would harvest first the pistons would extend, and then it would retract for a brief moment and then extend again. And then it would. So basically, how it would work, it would pulse out and then push out again. So it was like a double push. And kind of how that, and basically that would allow one row of pistons to harvest sugarcane that grows too high up from the bottom. And that design actually worked pretty well. And for this particular farm, I would have used a daylight sensor to trigger it off every day-night cycle. And that cactus farm that you see is pretty much just it's kind of that design of a cactus farm that's that everyone uses. It's basically where the cactus would grow, and then it would visit is touching another block, it would immediately pop off. around this point in time came the first of my kind of bad decisions that, looking back now, was stupid, and I should have done differently. Well, what happened was I really wanted to build an iron farm, and well, when I was going to build the iron farm, I wanted to put it in the same area as all my other farms were. But there was just one minor problem. It just so happened that actually nearby, so basically the area in which I built the multi-farm, well, the first multi-farm, basically it was this area that a few other players have built in before I have, and it's been, of course, like, and there's also just been players who just like put like those 1 block high pillars everywhere, and there was like creeper craters everywhere, and it was kind of basically kind of a rough area, and it just so happened that kind of a player had a like a starter house, like basically. I think it was. I don't remember if it was like right underneath the multi-farm, because I actually built it up in the air, up in the sky. I think probably 20 blocks above the ground. And I don't remember if that base was directly below it or kind of to the side, but anyway, it was, well, the thing it was at least with iron farms prior to 1.13, or 1.14, excuse me. It's basically how they would have what they would work with by doors, and then the number of doors you'd have would determine that there's a village there and the number of houses in that village. But then that would have a problem where if there's any other doors in the area surrounding either an iron farm or a villager breeder, it would interfere with. It would basically, I think it would move the center of the village so that it's no longer in the farm, and of course that would mess up the iron golem farm or the villager breeder or what have you. And at the time, well, in hindsight, I should have just found a different area to build this iron farm. What I did was, it wasn't just me who did this. I think it was a mod killer who actually kind of coaxed me into doing it. We were both kind of dumb young kids, but at the time. But anyway, what had happened was I was kind of in the area, and I led a creeper to that house, and it blew up, and I think I may have even had a second creeper blow it up, and then actually later that day, an admin actually came on to the scene and of course confronted me like, hey, that's against the rules, shouldn't have done that, and of course talk about, well, what if I world edited your base out, or just basically trying to get me to see that was a wrong thing that I did. And I think I actually did end up getting jailed for a day. Well, basically, Autcraft has this kind of part of the disciplinary system or punishment system or whatever you call it. They had this, well, they call it the jail, where it's basically and it's most specifically used to handle people who grieve, and it's basically if someone gets caught griefing, they get teleported into like a room where they're not allowed to teleport out, and it's usually like just for a day or so, or I guess depending on the circumstances. But for me, since it was kind of the first, at the time I had no like I have not done any offenses prior to that, and so at the time I kind of got like the minimum like sentence or whatever of like about a day in jail. And I kind of just, well, at the time I was just mad, and I just kind of logged off the instant I got teleported there. And while I was kind of mad, I just kind of spent like about a day just kind of doing other things, and just kind of to get my mind off of that. And then the next day I logged back on and found that, so I was still in the jail, and then I requested that I get teleported out. And luckily for me, there was a staff member on, or if not on, at least in Vanish or at that time. So of course and then they finally teleported me out, and that was the end of that. And I just kind of went on with my life. And I actually never ended up building that iron farm. I don't really know why. I guess I just never got around to building it. And I guess after I went through that, I was just kind of in a bit of trauma, and I just kind of, I guess I just didn't really feel like doing. I guess I just didn't I guess that kind of affected me emotionally a bit, and I just didn't really feel like playing too much. But anyway, that was the only time I ever was put in the jail on Autcraft, and like literally the only time in my entire 6 years or 7 years I've been on Autcraft, that was the only time I was in jail, which I'm proud of. And yeah. This is just kind of more views of the redstone. And well, this is another tree farm that I built. And well, let me first kind of talk about this kind of story. Well, kind of a bit later on, Autism Father kind of ran into some problems or some issues where and he put a full forum post about this, and I think it was some players weren't replanting, or some players I guess took saplings and didn't replace them, and I guess it's just kind of, I guess, bad etiquette for like community farms. And at the time, AF decided that he just wasn't going to have a community tree farm anymore, and if players need to get wood, they just go in the resource world and find trees. And at the time, I was just, well, it was also the post was also about that if you want to have a public farm, you can protect from the ground level downward, but not above. And at the time, I was a little kind of, I was kind of a little bit upset at the time, because I actually didn't really use that particular tree farm that much. I kind of used my own tree farm, but at that time, I kind of decided that I was gonna actually move the multi-farm to kind of the area around where I think it was the area kind of nearby to where that community tree farm used to be. And anyway, and also just because that area where the first multi-farm was just very, as I said, it was just like a very rough area. It was just a lot of players had built things there, and just kind of wanted to go to an area that was just cleaner. And yeah, and anyway, I kind of moved over here and I built this tree farm, which of course there's kind of a different design. It used slime blocks. This is kind of the leaf crusher, and how it would work is like when you plant a tree, all these walls would move inward and crush the leaves. And as you can see, I even put like, when I built this tree farm, I decided to have the walls like all glass so that you can see like all the redstone wiring and on the inside, because I just thought it looked cool. And this was the wood collection area, so basically the wood would come out there, and these pistons would push it off to the side, and then when wood gets all the way to the end, all these pistons would push it forward. And then there was actually a redstone torch that would actually that of course would send a redstone signal to the farm to shut it off when it gets full. This is just kind of more the redstone. It was very dense, kind of a lot going on. And of course, this isn't really much of a pretty build. It's just kind of like that second base, which is mostly function over form. And of course, that's what the wood area looks like, kind of partially filled up. I didn't have that many other screenshots of this particular area, but I kind of had some other farms here, and I don't think actually very many players use this second multi-farm, but it was anyway kind of a lot of farms for me and Ninjago and Modkiller at the time. I think I also have done this when actually I was in the third base at the time, which of course I'm going to get to and probably possibly it's coming up very soon, though I may have more episode before this, as I do have another farm that I want to talk about. And this project, basically just like a lot of all my other projects in the old build worlds, kind of got lost to the map resets, and I think I actually had a few other attempts to do community farms later on, but I just never really got too far with them. And well, I kind of ran at the time, like, and I also had like a shop area where I would sell, I think, a few things like shulker shells, and totems of undying and such. And I think like I ran into like this problem where if I wanted to set up a community area somewhere, I'd have to find, well, if I want people to know where it is, I want to put it near a teleport station, but of course the thing is the teleport stations had like a small region around them where you can't build anything, and then it just at that time there were a lot of the teleport stations had like a lot of people had built things there already, and I just wasn't really able to find much areas to build there. Though I think though Autcraft's build worlds have expanded several times, and several new teleport stations were added, and I think we're at a point now where I probably could do another multi-farm, but now just kind of with all the problems I've ran into with lag, with other farms I've done later, and also Atlantis on ACO, but it's just I've been kind of put off the idea of building farms on multiplayer servers, so I might at some point in the future post about it on the forums and see what people think about it. And if I get enough upvotes, so I'll possibly plan multi-farm 3.0. We'll just see. And anyway, I don't really have too much else to say, but this project was I did enjoy this project very much, as it was definitely my first time that I've actually worked together with other players on a multiplayer server. And I also kind of almost forgot to mention that the first multi-farm I worked with, I believe, Mod Killer, Ninjago, and Oakstone. And then I think there might have been another player but I'm not sure if I remember the name of them. Yeah. I think also, and also at the first multi-farm, I had a sugarcane farm before the one I showed, but I kind of actually replaced it with that design, that lossless design, since it was better. And I also had a storage system that all the farms would put items into. And yeah. I don't really have too much else to say, so I guess I'm gonna wrap up this episode here. And this has been Dusty Circuit, and of course remember, like and subscribe, and rate, comment, and stay tuned for the next episode or my next video, and peace out. Bye.